The DIESOL podcast,
Developing innovation in English as a second or other language.
episode 81, AI in ESL.
Welcome to DIESOL. This is episode 81. We are your hosts. I'm Brent Warner.
And I'm Michelle Reyes.
Hey.
Live from Taiwan.
Hey, all right. So now you're finally telling us where's the mystery
I am in
location.
Taiwan.
You're in Taiwan. How
in
is it
south
there?
of Taiwan. Yep. It is beautiful. It's warm. So once again, in true fashion, as I've done in the last 4 years, I am missing out on the cold wave that is hitting the States.
That's pretty smart.
Because I heard it snowed there in California.
Yeah, we got
right?
some.
Didn't it snow? Yeah.
It graupled. That's the word that I learned. Soft hail is called graupel, and I'm assuming you can verbify that.
Brant is adding new words to his weather lexicon.
Yeah, I was originally like, I'm never going to remember that, but now I'm just trying to use it as many times as I can so that it sticks with me.
Grapple, Grapple.
Grauple, I think.
Grauple.
Grauple, yeah.
Grauple.
So it's not
cool.
It's not graupling in Taiwan.
It's definitely not. It's nice and balmy, 76 to 80 degrees.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So good. Glad you're surviving and living there and doing your biz.
Adapting to the scooters.
Oh yeah, heading to the scooters
life. In Taiwan.
yeah, it's a whole it's a culture. It's a scooter culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Esol
I used to give props to
podcast.
the moms
She's
in
like,
Japan.
Isel, you're doing lots of like non-verbals. You're like nodding your head and you're smiling and things. I'm like, this is audio, so.
So I used to give props to moms in Taiwan and Japan for riding their bicycles with their kids on, like 2 kids on a bicycle.
Uh-huh.
But now there's a whole new level of respect for moms in Taiwan on their motorcycle, and they've got 2 kids and sometimes 3 kids on a motorcycle.
Oh yeah. Well, you've seen some of those ones. I don't know if it was Taiwan or what country, but you've seen some ones where they have like they're almost like a circus act. Like they've got like like 12 people hanging off of a single bike and or motorcycle and like going for it. So so I hope to see some pictures of you doing that in the near future. All right. So so today we're kind of coming back to the popular conversation of the day. Artificial intelligence. We've talked about it a bit before, but let's jump in and get to the content. All right, so Esol, part of the reason that we are talking about this again today, so we talked about artificial intelligence 1 year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, February of 2022 on episode 59. Do you remember that?
I do.
I think so.
I just know it was a long time ago now, and in internet years, it's been a lifetime.
Yeah. So we basically made a bunch of predictions, and I went back and listened to that recently. It was pretty interesting. We got some things right, or kind of guided towards some right things. We definitely kind of skipped over a lot of the generative text that is really the big thing that ended up coming out this year and that we're really talking about a lot, that's driving everybody all sorts of directions right now. But it was interesting. I think we got some parts really right on, some kind of the ways that people are reacting and what might happen, but other parts, it's not so much that we were wrong, it's that we didn't talk or didn't recognize what was going to be coming with some parts too, which is fine. That's how predictions go. Right. And then in December, just a few episodes back, we had ChatGPT with Eric Roth. That was a great opening conversation, I think. And I actually just went to lunch with Eric recently, and we're still kind of talking. But it's just great to talk with him about kind of the theory and understanding these big ideas ideas behind ChatGPT, and we'll repeat a little bit of that today as well. But today we're really looking at some practical advice because I'm not going to make a sound
Because
effect.
people are going through an existential crisis.
We'll get to that in just a second. The first reason is because we're launching a side site, AI in ESL.com.
That's right.
You forgot so soon.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. So AI in ESL.com, we're just launching it. It's meant to be a practical site for teachers in ESL who are thinking about and trying to figure out ways to use artificial intelligence. We kept it with AI because it's not ChatGPT necessarily, as there's more and more things coming out, more of these chat bots and different things. But I think really what we're looking for here, it'll be a lot of my experimenting with things, and maybe some reviews of AI resources and things like that. But also it'll be, hopefully, if any of you out there listening and you're trying to use artificial intelligence in your classroom, and failures and successes both, we're interested in hearing about those. And if you want to write something up or put it up on the site, let us know.
Share something, yeah.
Share it out, because I think our field in particular, we're going to find lots of kind of general AI in classrooms, AI in education kind of conversations. But a lot of the conversations that I'm seeing so far are, how do we say it? I mean, there's still like a lot of them are from edu celebrities who maybe are not in the classroom. Like they're good ideas. There's lots of good ideas going in out there and all of those things, but maybe people who aren't in the classroom or aren't dealing with our student population. And so there will be more, of course, ESL related articles, and we'll try to share those to people, but it's basically just a resource. And so AI in ESL.com, and also announcing it here and talking about it for this episode, means I have to get my stuff together and get the site actually properly launched by the time this episode airs. So there we go, AI in ESL. But Esol, let's talk about this. So there's all these conversations. You were getting to this point here, that people are dealing with all of this technology in different ways. So what are you seeing?
So, well, definitely several differing viewpoints. I think, again, I call that a teacher existential crisis, because we're sort of having to really rethink how we approach assessment and how we're going to either shun or incorporate this tool. But you pegged it right where you said that people are probably going through the stages of grief. And part of it is like, again, denial that, no, this can't be happening. This won't take off. This is not going to make it in. No, where we're going to, this is going to ruin the profession and writing in general. Anger, of course, at the fact that immediately people are fearful of something new and going to the worst case scenario, which is cheating. I think there's a lot of conversations around plagiarism and cheating, and there's real anger. And I think it's because teachers have spent so much time creating assessments that are quote unquote plagiarism proof, which I don't think really exists. And I think you don't have one solution that works forever. Right. So there's anger in that. And then there's this whole bargaining approach. And I think here, Brent, I think is it where you're trying to figure out how you're going to incorporate the tools, or I wasn't sure. I know you mentioned how can we do this?
Yeah, so like maybe we'll take parts of this, maybe we won't allow other parts of it, right? Like, we can
there's
do
been
this, but we won't do that, right?
There's knee-jerk reactions in many institutions. I've seen articles floating around about colleges immediately banning such and such, or ChatGPT, or articles about how if anything is found to be created from a auto-generated source, there are consequences. And again, that's, I think, out of fear and anger and denial. And then there's this whole like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I can't beat it. So there's a whole sense of depression and kind of, again, questioning it's existential crisis in terms of teaching, because what you've grown accustomed to that has worked in the past, or seems to work, doesn't work with this new tool.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, acceptance and understanding that this is not going away. Just like our cell phones and screens and cameras are not going away, this is just going to get better and smarter,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps.
Oh, definitely.
And now it's how can we coexist? And when you realize, I think that there are teachers already embracing this that did not just shun it and again fear it or react with fear, that there is a way that where you can coexist and it can become a tool, then you're simply just reframing how you're approaching this. And I think that's the existential crisis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's grief. It's grief. It really
it
is.
is big time. We were talking a little bit pre-show about this, and it's like, you know, for you and me, and some of our colleagues who are gung ho to try
Mm-hmm.
these things out, right? We might be a little bit faster to get through these process because we're working through it directly, right, all the time, and maybe I know right now you can't do it, but like being willing to incorporate it into the class and trying it out and seeing what happens and experiencing the failures and the successes with it, right? And so I think that has, at least for me, kind of fast tracked me through the process, because I still get those feelings, right? Like, oh, like, wait a second, this is not a good thing, right? Sometimes, or if students don't learn
Mm-hmm.
how to use these things in a good way, then they're just gonna use it foolishly, right? Or use it in ways that are going to stop them from possibly studying or getting the knowledge, gaining the knowledge that they maybe need. And
Mm-hmm.
so I still definitely go through all those, and we talked about some of those when Eric was on the show. And it's not perfect, right? I'm not at the end, but mostly I'm at the acceptance stage. And so I think that this is it's going to take a lot more time for a lot of people who are, hey, I read an article this week, maybe I thought about it again, a month later, and that's going to be a lot harder conversation, or a slower process through the grief, I guess, as people go. So wherever you are, that's totally fine. But I guess we are kind of making the assumption that eventually you'll get to acceptance and kind of recognize that this is we are living in this future, and we are living in this world, and if you don't agree, that's okay. You can stop the episode right here. But if you agree later,
Not
you can
going
come
away.
back and play it again. Yeah. So Esol, I thought we talked a little bit about this, and today we're going to kind of split into two parts. One part is practically using AI with your class, so things that students can do, and then the second part we'll kind of talk about using AI in your workflow as a teacher. And so let's begin with things that students can do and things that students can actually use this in the classroom with. So you want to start us off?
Okay, so here in Taiwan, I've run into a teacher who has a writing class, and he told me right away that he was using ChatGPT because he can have the students enter a particular topic. And if he wants to focus on a grammar point, he can, or a grammar point or a style, a writing style. So, for example, a comparative paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
The students can look in groups. They can look at the sample and then generate their own using, I guess, what we would normally say, like the framing of the paragraph or the framing of the grammar. They
Mm-hmm.
can see it immediately from a sample. And then now that leaves them free not to have to come up with different examples from text, but one that they can see a pattern immediately, automatically, and it could generate a different example every time. So that's a really good way to get the students interested and not immediately calling Chat GPT or this AI tool, an enemy, because it is not.
Yeah. I bet you could also, prompt it to say, hey, break this paragraph down or break this essay down into the different parts and clarify what's going on with each section, right? Because I bet it could do that too.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't tried that yet, but I could absolutely see that. So that use of examples and creating examples, and we'll talk more about that too a little bit later, different versions of that. But I love that there's already people out there that are also using it, trying things out. That's awesome. So I'm going to kind of flipped to the next part of this, which is self-analysis. And so I think there's a little bit of work here on the teacher's side. So one thing that I think a lot of us are starting to figure out is the way that you prompt these AI things really makes a difference in the output, right? And so, so one thing that you can do is you can actually have AI analyze the student's work, right? So you can create a prompt into something like ChatGPT or whichever one it is, and then you can say, hey, analyze this assignment that a student wrote, right? And then it'll go through and it'll do the analysis based on the parameters that you gave to it. So this is where the practice will come in for the teachers, is like, okay, what are the parameters that I'm trying to set up? So you could say, you could start real simple, but I think the better details or the more clear you are with it, the better response it'll give to you. So, but anyways, I did do this with my class, and I said, hey, show me the strengths and weaknesses of this particular writing assignment. Then I had the students take that analysis of their work, and I had them compare it against what they actually wrote. And then I said, well, what are you learning from what AI is telling you, right? And so do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Is it missing anything? Is it missing any pieces of information? And what do you think about those? And so then it's kind of cool because they get to say, oh, well, what's the computer saying about my work, and what is it understanding and not understanding? And they're kind of motivated internally because it's the computer analyzing them. At this point, it's still novel for them. So they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. What's going on? It might be in the future, a couple years down the line, they're like, whatever, like that's what everybody does, and I don't care what the computer says. But right now, it is pretty interesting to people. So they can actually use that as a way to get re-engaged with their own quality of work, which is a really interesting way to play with it.
Yeah. So another cool thing that you can do is have chat GPT stylize the work. So for example, convert information or pieces of writing into a rap battle, poems, screenplays. Earlier today, I was inputting stuff in there to see, I often have trouble. I mean, I bought plenty of materials to help me have ideas for communicative activities. Usually it's a role play or a skit or some kind of dialogue. And so I entered in there, write a dialogue about blah, blah, blah. And I had specific grammar points, and I had a specific vocabulary target that I wanted to hit. And it sure did create a dialogue. And I thought, wait a minute, I didn't even tell it how many people. So and it was just 2 people. Then I typed in, write a rap song about a guy from this country and his job is this, and it sure did write one. So I can see how this would become really interesting for students trying to learn how to input something clearly, and then also realizing, wait a minute, I wanted it to do this, but it didn't do it because I didn't specify. So it also helps you to be more specific. So I think that's really cool. Students can then determine what's missing, and they can take the framework and then turn it into something that's their own. And I think this is maybe a little bit more interesting than when the teacher gives like those close exercises.
Yeah.
Where they're pre-written, and I have a class right now that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they love American music. They want to sing. And they said, we want to sing in class. We want to have a karaoke day. I was like, well, we can have a karaoke day, but it's got to be related to the content. So now I can sort of start to see the possibility of, hey, we can actually do this, and you can create your own song because you guys like the style of such and such artist. So let's try to work with that. So
I was just
Go
thinking,
ahead.
yeah. So I'm like, as you're saying that, I've seen a couple people do things like rewrite the lyrics to such and such Taylor Swift song with this idea in mind, right? And it actually does it. And so it's like, if you know the rhythm and the kind of the pacing of that song, and then you said, well, hey, rewrite it with this content and make sure that you're using this, these
target
verb tenses or whatever. That could be super cool.
I put in use gerunds, and so it used a bunch of gerunds in the I think there was like 4 verses. I was like, that is pretty cool. Now, if I really want to say, make sure you use the word this, and this, or use higher level, use academic I don't know, the academic word list, sub list number one. You could really now
Oh, that's so
have
cool.
something pretty cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love that. Now I'm thinking like, oh, okay, because that's kind of it's making me think of like our talk with Holly Sawyer that we had about her like
Uh-huh.
programming and where the
Yeah.
students get to the point where
Yeah.
they really want to specify that language to be able to get
Hmm.
those. She was doing the programming and the robots moving around, but now we could
Hmm.
talk about that for just things
With
like singing.
words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
That's exactly what we're talking about. And I think that it helps students become more aware of their own ability or lack of yeah, just being specific. That
huh.
can be very difficult I mean, just in watching my students this week talk to each other when I say, okay, you have to write the dialogue, and you have to make sure that the audience understands what your topic is. Sometimes it's hard for them to convey a topic if you're not pointing out like, oh, but how are they going to know this, or how do they, or is the context for this? So this might be a way that frees the teacher
Mm.
to help others, and students can become autonomous over their own I guess awareness of what they're lacking. And I think I like that part because right now I normally have small classes. Right now I have classes I consider larger for a very short period of time. So their time has to be used very carefully and wisely. So if it frees me up to work with a really struggling students, then they've got at least some place to go for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't replace me, but it's something that they can
Let's be
use.
clear. It doesn't replace me.
Doesn't replace me. Well, it doesn't talk yet, so that's coming.
Getting there. Yeah.
That's coming.
All right. So I have another thing that people can do, or the students can do, which is they can have a debate, right? So they can set it up where you can say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is one of the ones that people have been really playing with a bit, but you can set it up and you can tell AI to take whatever side of an argument, right? And so that could be really personal to students, right? So, for example, they could say, "Hey, I got in an argument with my boyfriend, girlfriend, my child, my parents, whatever it is, about this. You're going to take the side of the other person. I'm going to take my side, and I'm going to try to work my way through that debate," right? And so they could actually have and kind of figure out what the language for an argument that they're trying to support is. It could, of course, be a local, a global issue or a world issue like regular debates. But I think that for students to customize it to things that they're like, I was, like I get students who say like I just couldn't talk about this thing. I was so upset and I really wanted to be able to say this thing, but I didn't know how. And I was like, well, you could plug that in and practice it and see what the reactions might be coming back from it as well. So, so there could be some really interesting things, and then remind students that as they're going through and having a debate, they can actually pause and then ask the artificial intelligence to say, hey, clarify what you mean by this, right? And because the
Mm-hmm.
AI is not emotionally invested in the debate itself, right? So they're not going to, like, if you're talking to your husband or wife and you're in the middle of a fight, you kind of can't just say, I don't understand these words. I mean, you can. I've done it.
That's never happened to you?
Yeah, but you could say, but like you can't really just stop to get like clarification on everything, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
can when you're practicing with something like this. So that might be an interesting thing, and it can take the opposite side.
That's very, very cool. You can also use it to have students get clarification on unclear ideas. So, one of the things that I didn't understand initially was ChatGPT itself. So, just by asking it, please explain ChatGPT, it explained it to me step by step in a way that I could be like, oh, I can now take this information and I can verbally tell someone else who now will understand that idea. And you could
Mm-hmm.
do this about battles. You could do this about history movements. You can do it about science cycles, like all sorts of just anything really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then every time it's too hard, you could say make it easier, or explain
Mm-hmm.
paragraph 2 or whatever else it
Mm-hmm.
is. So I think one of the big things about these,
Explain it like I'm
yeah,
five.
that one is the popular way to people are taking to it. But you can also say like, hey, can you can you clarify what you wrote in paragraph 2, right? So it does, maybe they understand parts of it but not every part, and so you can actually ask it to get those too. So I like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
just one kind of last one here, which is grammar points, right? So we talked about grammar before, and how you said your colleague is using it and doing
Mm-hmm.
some grammar checks, but you can actually go in there and type. I've had my own students do this. When they start typing in their own language, it does understand and does
Mm-hmm.
put out pretty amazing content in their
What?
language. Yeah, so I had some
I'm
of
gonna
my
try that right now.
students. Yeah, I know. Well, I wasn't aware,
Holy
and then
crap.
we were experimenting with it in class, and my students were like, and I said, well, like, let's see what happens. And they're like, they started figuring out, and they're like, oh, well, if I write, do this in Chinese, right? I've got some Chinese students in my class, and
Mm-hmm.
the second part they said answer in Chinese, and then it started printed, like putting out Chinese content. I'm like, oh, this knows all these different languages too. So
It just did that in Japanese for me.
yeah, yeah, isn't it cool?
That's amazing.
So yeah, you can actually
Holy
have them.
crap.
Yeah, so you can say like, "Hey, I don't understand subject verb agreement." I know I always use that example. I don't understand subject verb agreement. Explain it to me in
Mm-hmm.
Japanese, right? And so then they can come
Mm-hmm.
back, and then they can get the full Japanese explanation of that English language grammar point, and they can get a little quick clarification as they're ready to move forward. So lots and lots and lots of ways that you can actually encourage students to use this to benefit their language growth, and not just to replace it as a quick, like, oh, here's the English result put out of generative AI. But no, you're actually interacting with it and using it as an opportunity to build your own language skills. And so I think there's a lot of really cool things. We're just starting to see people figure out how to use those.
Amazing.
All right, so quick break. Michelle, we've talked about this a couple times, and
Mm-hmm.
we've gotten some takers here and there before presentations and things. If people are looking for consultation, training, presenters, we do have limited slots. As we've mentioned before, you and I are both full-time teachers, and that is our priority.
Mm-hmm.
But we do want to help people out. So if there are, if you are looking for some ways to help your team develop, or better interact with your students, you can reach out and work with one of us or both of us, whatever your needs are, possibly depending on your needs and our availability. But please do reach out if you want to talk about the details. You can find us at DIESOL.org. All right. So next up, Michelle, we talked a little bit about some things that students can do for themselves, maybe in your class,
Mm-hmm.
or how they can use it to build. But there's the back end too, right? The teachers themselves, us. We might have things that we want to do to set up or use some of this technology. And someone just sent me an article, I think today or yesterday, that they said it's basically teachers are using ChatGPT and other AI more than students are. Right? And I was like, I haven't read the article, so I'm not sure exactly what it says, but I'm not totally surprised, because teachers are going crazy and like trying to figure it out and learn about it. And so maybe we're spending a lot more time kind of, trying to figure out how these things work. But we'll start with some of these ways that people can use them. So very easy. And this is the one that everybody kind of starts off with, which is write an email or an announcement for students, reminding them about homework, campus events, whatever those things are. You can also customize it to language levels, right? So you could say, for if you know the Common European Framework, you could say, write an email reminding students to do this homework, and this homework, and that this event is happening in town this weekend, and do it at the B1 level, right? And so you
That's
can, yeah,
awesome.
you can do all this cool stuff, and then have it do it, and it can write a little bit of a longer email, and so you spend 10-15 seconds thinking of the prompt, but it might be an email that you would have spent 15 to 20 minutes crafting itself, right? So I think that is one way that teachers might get started playing with it. And again, it's just about getting comfortable here, right? It's not about that you have to do all of these
Mm-hmm.
things, but once you start getting comfortable with this, then you can say, okay, let me use that as a starting point to my next thing. But that's one way.
Yeah, you can also use AI to simplify things. So, for example, I know that I oftentimes have someone, a colleague, for example, take a look at an email I'm writing or take a look at a message I'm going to send to other people to make sure they understand what I write. But that also takes away from their time, or I have to wait until they're available. And you can just ask AI to simplify your writing and make it easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Then I mean, if it's then I can also have a colleague look at it if I need to, but that would just free up that time. Plus, it's just more, it's faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's faster.
So this is when I started playing with a little bit, but you can actually have it build quizzes, right? At our school we use Canvas, and I figured out this is for low stakes assignments, but one of the things that we
Mm-hmm.
always is like, okay, let's have a quiz bank that students can go in and practice this work. And then it's like, well, who's going to sit there and write 100 questions, right? Because that's a lot of work. It ends up,
Yeah.
with all of the possible, multiple choice answers and all these things. So I went and did it, and I had it write. I think the max it was able, just for content length, it was able to get me about 25 questions at a time, but in a matter of 20 seconds, right? So I did I did asking it to use modals of speculation, right? And so then it made this quizzes with A, B, C, D, right? And then basically
Mm-hmm.
you can have it export, and regardless of your platform. So if you're using Canvas quizzes, or if you're using, something like Kahoot or whatever else it is, all of these things have ways to upload your own content, and that could be in a spreadsheet, for example. And so you can actually have ChatGPT or whatever your AI source is, create it in a way that's already going to be output into the required spreadsheet format. And then you can just click
It's
another
freaking
button or
fascinating.
two. It's pretty quick, yeah. And then upload it right in there, and then it's generated the quiz for you. So I'm like, oh my God. So instead of waiting, it's like, okay, I'm going to spend all day today writing 100 questions. It's like a little bit of
Yeah.
cleanup. I did go through and look at some of them, but what a time saver. And I'm not trying
So,
for super
so
super fancy, but yeah.
So Brent, as you're talking about that, I'm on ChatGPT and I wanted to test the true or false. I sometimes do little quizzes just to get the students thinking or
Hmm.
about the previous content. Just a comprehension checks, quick, again, low stakes. And I typed in, write a true or false quiz of 10 questions
Hmm.
about Taiwan.
Hmm.
And sure enough, it generated a true or false quiz with the answer key. And I think the only thing that I'm curious about is where can I get the sources for it so that I can double check. But that is really cool because now it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm running behind or there's a change in my schedule and suddenly I need to check something or have sometimes an
Hmm.
icebreaker in between classes, I can do it very quickly and not have to spend all this time creating something that I'm going to use only for 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. That's the big one right there.
Amazing.
Hmm. So I know you're
Uh,
you're getting all
so
distracted and like trying to log into
Yeah, I'm distracted because I'm like, this
ChatGPT.
is so cool. So, okay, so you said earlier that it could build a lesson plan. So I thought, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So I said, I typed in also build a lesson plan on what did I type? I erased it already because you can clear your the history of what
Hmm.
you're doing. But I typed in um, build a lesson plan about writing a role play on I don't on basic training in the military,
Hmm.
and it broke apart the lesson into it was I didn't specify how long, so that's what I caught right away. I was like, oh, this is going to take 60 minutes for them to do this. No, I need a shorter time, and then I
Hmm.
need to put which vocabulary is the target vocabulary. But you can build out a lesson plan and then adjust and fine tune for your needs. And that's one of the things I didn't do is give it a timeline. If I wanted to say write a 50-minute lesson plan where the students write a skit using 10 words from this list, then I bet I would have gotten something that I could now fine tune. Again, it won't be the final product, but now I don't have to spend all this time formatting and laying things out. And now it's broken apart into, it'll even tell you materials that you need.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And by
I,
the
I
way,
wonder what it'll do if I, Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well,
I was gonna
you
say
can put in ISTE
customized for
standards.
language learners. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I was thinking, what if I add a oh my gosh, the words are escaping me right now. Um, tailor it for lower level students, lower level language students, or emerging language students to see what happens, or create a variation for, I don't know, for higher level students.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that would do.
Yeah, you can do
But that
all
is pretty
sorts.
cool.
I know, I know. Hold on. You can play with it all you want when we're done with
I
this
know I keep getting
episode.
distracted.
I know
I'm
you're
sorry.
like I just gotta go do it all right now. But yeah, you can set up a timeline. You can provide it with standards that you're looking for. So if we go back to our old, we did a little series on ISTE standards. We did a little series on Tesol standards, right? All of these different things, and so you could plug those standards in, and then like you said, you can give it a timeline and say, hey, this is a 1 hour class, or across four 2 hour classes, or whatever else it is, right? And it'll do it. And by the way, the lesson plans it builds are pretty good, I gotta say. I was like, oh, like I've spent a lot of time building these in the past, and now it's just making this really good one right here. So that works. And then this last one here, Esol, this is what I wrote a recent one of my most recent blog post for the Tesol blog, is really about building custom, super hyper focused custom content. And the reason this came up was because I was doing a presentation on this up in Northern California in Salinas, which is, I don't know if you spent any time up there, but that's, Steinbeck country, agricultural farm area. And I was thinking about it as we were kind of talking with the group that I was talking with, and I was like, you know what? Students here, like they're interested in a lot of things, but like their life is around rural agricultural life. But content in ESL textbooks or whatever they're working with are almost always about like urban life and what is it like in New York City and all of these things. And I'm like, what about custom content that really connects to what they're interested in? What about their neighborhood, right? What would happen if they had a story about George Clooney coming to visit their town, right? Or whatever else it is, right? And going to the restaurants that they know, and so they could really customize it and fine tune it so that it's super interesting directly to the student and relevant to their interests, right? And so this is where I think there's a ton of room to experiment and to bring this in, is that we all have this ambition as teachers, like, oh, I'm going to make custom content, I'm going to do this and this, and like some of us are able to do it, and then we kind of get tired, or like we kind of have like a little kit that we use, but it kind of fades over the years, and whichever celebrity we're talking about maybe isn't that popular with the next group of students. And so you could just, with a quick flick, you can get these all updated, all customized all the time. And I think that is really where we're going to see a lot of power here. And it'll, and this has always been an issue with the major publishers, is that it takes so long to get that content, which is not customized. And now you can just make unending custom content that is just so focused for your students. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes, but custom content, I think this is going to be the power move for a lot of teachers with building stuff for their students on the back end before they go into class. Shell is gone. She's just like, I am Chat GPT, and I am AI.
No,
I'm not listening to you.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I was sending a colleague the link to ChatGPT because I told her about it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a time saver.
Get
anyway.
off the phone. All right, so lots of different things. This is just kind of kicking things off, but if you're using AI in the classroom and you want to share, and again, like we said earlier, we want to hear about successes, we want to hear about failures, we want to hear about problems, we want to hear about new and different ways of playing with it with AI in your language classroom. And this doesn't matter if you're in America, if you're in Egypt, if you're in Japan, wherever you are, if you're trying these things out and seeing, let us know. So AIinESL.com. It'll be, we're going to slowly be building this over time and trying to add some parts in here, but we want to hear your voice. And this is not just us, right? This is anyone who could be benefiting from this. So AIinESL.com. Please check it out.
It is time for our fun finds. And this time around, I have Taiwanese guavas. Brent, have you ever had one?
I've been to Taiwan, but I don't think I had a guava when I was there.
So, well, I mean, I didn't know that there was a difference, but of course there is a difference because not all guavas are the same. and Taiwanese guavas are exactly, or Mexican for that reason, because I'm comparing it to a Mexican guava, which is what I'm used to. But Taiwanese guavas are pretty big. They're almost as big as like your average. Like I want to compare it to an apple, but an apple could also be small. It's pretty big. It's like the size of a hand, an adult hand.
Got it.
It's pretty big. Mexican guavas are small. So, and Taiwanese guavas
like the
are
size
green.
Of a baby's hand.
They're very yes. Right. They're green and they're very crispy, almost like a pear consistency, and they're very juicy. Whereas the guavas I'm used to back home are small, like a baby's hand. They're yellow. They're yellow on the outside, or kind of like a soft, squishy, pinkish or yellowish on the inside,
like
and they're not hand. As. I need to ask ChatGPT to compare the differences and
How
just
shall
be
I
more
compare
more
the guava
precise.
to a summer's day? All right, we're going loopy here.
But they're delicious, and I have them every morning. And now I don't know if I can live without them in the States, so I need to find where I can purchase them.
Okay,
they're delicious.
All right.
Taiwanese guavas.
Taiwanese guavas. All right. So mine is a TV show, Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so and now I know you are not a fan of this, not a fan, but I don't think you're aware of Columbo, which is a very famous detective show starring Peter Falk from the 1960s all the way through the 90s. I think it's just like this massively long show. One of the just great detective shows. But Natasha Lyonne is in this show called Poker Face, which is basically the same premise. So if you liked Columbo and you're bummed that Peter Falk is dead and that there is no more Columbo, you will really like Poker Face. It's an excellent show. The premise, it kind of flips the murder mystery on its head, and so what it does is it actually shows someone doing a crime, and the whole story of the crime. It can be half the episode, like 30 minutes of an hour-long show can just be showing like the setup to the crime, and then the second part of the show is when Natasha Lyonne comes in and actually kind of figures out what's going on. Now there's like a little bit of a premise to this, which is that she just has an inborn sense of when people are lying to her, and so it kind of makes it easy for her to figure out what's going on. But it's a fun show. It's lots of different really A-list celebrities are on the show as guests for every episode, and so it is worth checking out if you're a fan of detective type shows. She's not a detective, she's a vagrant in the show, which is also a good fit, but it's really interesting. So Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne.
All right. As always, thank you for listening. Just also want to say that Brent and I have done our very best to still reach out to you, even when we're overseas. And that's because we want you to hear all of this idea. So thank you for listening. Thank you. Even if I know a couple of our listeners have said, oh, I'm behind on episodes. It's okay. Listen at your pace.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
we love hearing feedback. And if you're giving us a shout out anyway, tag us on social media. We're mostly alive somewhere. On all the platforms.
I like that phrasing. Yeah, so we're kind of out there. We're definitely responsive if you want to send us a message on diesel.org, or send us an email. But yeah, a little lower on the social media these days, but we're around. So we do have a Patreon if you want to support the show. We have a buy us a coffee over there too. Show notes for this episode at diesel.org/81, and of course you can listen to us at Voice Ed Canada as well. And social media wise, let's say Twitter for now. I mean, we're still struggling with that,
Mm-hmm.
but at Diesel Pod for the show. And I am at Brent G. Warner.
I'm Ixy_Pixie. That's IXY_PIXY. And in Taiwanese, thank you is Toshia. Toshia for tuning in to the Diesel podcast.
And please check out AIandESL.com if you're so inclined.
That's right.